All right. Good evening, everyone here in the room and out in the world at Center for Spiritual Living here in Tulsa. It's good to be with everyone today. You know, this morning, I woke up feeling a little sleepy and was going to sit down at the computer and start, just finishing up the talk for today. And as I sat down to the computer, I looked at the screen and it was all fuzzy on the left side. I said, what's going on here? So I was having some fluid flashers in my eyes. So I got up and went in the other room and I went to shut the door and let the dog in. And Kim said, what are you doing? My wife, Kim, said, I'm going to go meditate. I'm getting some flashers in the eyes and I think a little meditation will clear it right up. So I put on a guided meditation and it just said, okay, how are you feeling today? So, all right, a little distracted. So click distracted. So I'm going to get a meditation on being distracted. And it was interesting. It was a simple awareness meditation, just being aware of the breath, not trying to make it deeper or not. And then they said, open your eyes for a moment and look, identify 5 things in the room. No judgment, no nothing. Allow the eyes to close again. Then went on to say, what 3 things could you touch near you? Think about those. Name 2 smells. What 2 things you can smell? And then 3 things you could hear in the room. All very slow, just checking in. What was my awareness in the moment? To move away from thinking about something, moving me closer to knowing that I can just let my mind be centered on this plant. Okay. This music stand. The sound of the air conditioner running. The breathing of the dog nearby. And when I opened my eyes, the flashing was gone. As I expected. It was just one of those simple things. And another path would have been to say, oh my gosh, I'm detaching a retina and I better call Dale. I won't be able to be at church tonight. And I wonder if the eye doctor would be available today. Or just how about we try with some of those things that we learn here at Center for Spiritual Living, and Ernest Holmes taught us about our connection to oneness and to the presence of life that we have within us. And this time it worked. Should I look that way? Okay. Brad's taking a picture. Got it. So that was just one of those connections, one of those opportunities to practice what we preach. And the whole thing took 15 minutes from sitting down to work on my talk to shifting over. And this week, last week we talked about our relationship with ourselves. The theme for this month is relationship. And talking about that sense of relationship with myself, which is also my sense of relationship with the allness, the presence, and the wholeness of God, right? If I wouldn't speak to God, the divine, the infinite, the universal presence that way, why would I speak to myself that way? Let's be aware, and hopefully some of you are aware this week of the ways that we can reframe the things we're saying to ourselves when we are simply out of alignment because of circumstances, whether it's stubbing the toe or having a flash or a floater in the eye or just not feeling great in the moment. So this week we shift to the relationship that we have with others. And how we connect with not only individual other people, but the collective we in the world. Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, said, every person is an incarnation of God. And since each person is an individual, everyone must indeed be a unique incarnation, a unique individuation of that one. So when we look at our relationship with our friends and our family and the larger community, this includes how we know those people that we know personally, as well as strangers. How do we relate to a stranger we encounter through a nod, a wink, a wave, or an eye contact? Is that opportunity to make connections and to build community with each other? We may never see them again. Our paths have just crossed in this moment. And our lives, however, may be in some way changed by that simple connection, that simple glance, that simple interaction that we have. I shared with some of you a few months ago that I'm in this new job. I work down in Dallas for Southwest Airlines, and I'm there about once a week. Their complex is 3 enormous buildings near Dallas Love Field. Of course, it's called Love. And there's these beautiful glass walkways that are up high. And this week I went down there. I was to the headquarters by about 6:30 in the morning. And people were just waking up and coming in. I said, you know what, let me just go for a walk. I didn't need to get started on work. When I walk the hallways there, I am struck by the fact that I connect with people and they connect with me. There's never a time where people are walking on their phone with an ear plug in. Like, it's just not part of the culture there. The culture there is to stay connected. So when we're walking in the hallway coming across each other, there may be a group that they're all talking and laughing. They see me, they look up at me and say, hey, how are you? Oh, you know, as if I know them. And that's infectious. So that same energy is the energy then that I bring. So I said, let me set out on this walk and let me see who's here early in the morning that I can connect with today, with no agenda, no goal of nothing work related. Of course, it's work related, right? It's about heart and connection. And when we have that kind of connection with other people, we're there for common purpose. Life changes, productivity changes. The creative connection to the divine is there, and good things start to happen. So this culture of being connected and being kind is one that I can remember that I also can take out into the world when I'm driving somewhere, when I'm in a store, when I'm calling the Bank of Oklahoma about my 401k. You know, that this way to connect with people in a way that uplifts, empowers, even when it's a crappy situation or a tech issue, that there's an opportunity to just be connected with love. Love, Ernest Holmes says, is the only final security in the universe. Love is the greatest healing power in the universe and the only thing that binds people together in a community of spirit. And in today's Science of Mind magazine, and I'm sure Dolores read today's reading, there was an interesting quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson was quoted saying, the only way to have a friend is to be one. A lot of people nodding in the room, right? The only way to have a friend is to be one. And Reverend Jim Lockhart did the readings for today and the inspiration for the month. He goes on to say that we must heal ourselves to the degree that we are capable of bringing good to the friendship rather than expecting the friend to provide that good. So the work comes from within to be able to have that kind of connection. So when I was in training in Dallas, I was down there for a whole month of training. Several times while I was there, away from home for a month, I got a note that said, hey, come up and stop by the desk. There's something for you. So I go up and there's a little note, home-baked brownies for me. I was like, oh my God, that feels so good. And then the next week was, hey, are you going to be down in the training center at such and such time? Yeah. She comes running by, my friend Elise, and said, here, gave me a gift bag, gave me a hug, and went back to work. And there was fresh coffee pods and some snacks and some trail mix, just an energy to say, I care about you. Again, it's part of the culture there. So in my job for the last 19 years before this, I had these great inspirations to say, I'm going to reach out to people. I'm going to send them a card. I'm going to send them a note. I'm going to give them a gift bag. And it almost never came to fruition because I wasn't healed up myself. I was too tired and distracted and too busy. So I carried around this weight of kind of guilt. Like, why do I always have these ideas of wanting to care for someone? And then I make a note, sticky note, and then it gets crumpled up and faded. And I never do it. So that struck me this week. I had 2 friends who were in class. They followed me in training. And I went to Trader Joe's and got some gift bags with some trail mix and some sweet treats and hand wrote them each a card. And I was so excited. I put them in my bag and I carried them down to Dallas. And when they were on a break, I snuck in the classroom and put them on their desks, on their room in the classroom. And I just felt good to be like, there's this energy that is contagious, this energy of giving. And I knew that I hadn't been able to do that until I was able to heal my guilt and be inspired by those who had reached out to me while I was in the same boat. And then the text messages they sent me just were amazing. And both people said that your gesture couldn't have come at a more perfect time. It was a really hard day. And that lifted me up. And guess what? They're going to pay it forward. And they're going to pay it forward. So I just love that. Back to Ralph Waldo Emerson, not Ernest Holmes, saying, the only way to have a friend, bless you, is to be one. Good vibes beget good vibes. And that comes when we connect with other people. I'm going to make sure I leave time to talk today. So what happens when it doesn't feel like love? I read in the last week, New York Times op-ed by an author, Annie Lamott. Some of you probably know her name. I mean, she is powerful. She is, healed from addiction and just has such a powerful, amazing willingness to speak to the truth as she sees it. So she articulates what I think are one of the most challenging ways to connect in love to the we, when we seem to believe that we're polar opposites along the way. And in this op-ed, she starts by talking about the Supreme Court decision on the football coach who was fired for leading Christian prayer at the 50-yard line of the football field. And I thought she was going to go down this rant of separation of church and state and how that shouldn't be allowed. And so she touched on that really briefly and then moved right on, because instead what she got into a discussion of is prayer and how do we connect with people when it's hard to connect. So she says, prayer means talking to God or the great universal spirit, AKA Gus. I like that. Right? Prayer connects us umbilically to a spirit both outside and within us, who, or we would say which, hears and answers, right? It, this loving presence that we know to be the ever universal God, hears and answers our prayers because we are one with it. She says, I don't understand much about string theory, but I do know that we are vibrations all the time. Sounds a lot like what we believe. Being the tiny strings in space in which change can happen. The strings are infinitesimal. The space between nearly limitless. Tiniest space is limitless. Prayer says to that space, I am tiny, helpless, needy, worried, but there's nothing I can do except send my love into that which is bigger than me. Just like Ernest Holmes said, there is a power for good in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it. So it's easy to believe that we're one with everything. It's harder to believe that little old me can have an influence on the hearts that are broken in Highland Park today, or the hearts in the family that that are related to the commission of that heinous crime. She goes on to say, when I pray for all the places where we see Christ crucified, Ukraine, deep poverty in India, the refugee camps, I see in my heart in the newspapers that goodness draws near through UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, volunteers, and motley old us, with our thoughts. She talks about praying for all this and being a good steward and servant for her family. She talks about being quiet in the morning and having these lovely prayers for the people in her life who are in need. Then she says, then I put on my glasses, let the dog out to pee, and start my day. I then have horrible thoughts about others, typically the Christian right or the Supreme Court or someone who has seriously crossed me, whose hair I pray will fall out, or whose new book will fail. I say to God, as I do every Sunday, she says in confession, look, I think we can both see what we have on our hands here. Help me not be such a pill. I just love the way she puts that in perspective, right? Let it begin with me. If I'm sitting in one moment praying for those people in my life who have cancer or aren't feeling well, or in poverty or in need or in Ukraine, how can I not then pray? And then I'd be such a complainer about the things I disagree with in life. She says it's miserable to be a hater. I pray to be more like Jesus with his crazy compassion and reckless love. Some days do go better than others. I pray to remember that God loves Marjorie Taylor Greene exactly the same way as God loves my grandson, because God is spirit, life, love. It is love. God does not have an app, she says, for not love. God sees beyond each person's awfulness to each person's needs. God loves them as is, and God is better at this than I am, than we are. She goes on to say, and I think this is really helpful, sometimes the best we can do when faced in these circumstances is to get to being neutral about the people or occurrences or instances that we feel bitter about. Can I even get to where I'm not feeding the energy of ich? I mean, it may be really hard to go and love the committer of a heinous crime, heinous as described in earthly terms, but can I at least get to neutral? And she finds that a prayer of gratitude for all the messiness and all the beauty in her life is what helps her get there. So we can take that into our lives, right? When we move from the energy of ick about circumstances in life, about the we's that we don't like, and can at least get to neutral, prayers of gratitude for what is in our lives is what can help get us there. And she also says it's really great to spend time in nature. And when I wrote this, I thought about, like, if you haven't been to Della Lolita's house, they live in an urban wilderness. I mean, like, they walk out their yard, it's just complete nature, you know, and Highway 11 or something, right? You know, just on the other side of this wilderness, there's a highway on the other side, but it's a beautiful little sanctuary. And I'm sure all you need to do is walk out in the morning or in the evening, see the raccoons and the creatures that are coming by, and it just brings a smile to your heart until Dell starts thinking about having to cut the grass the next day. So there really is this opportunity to take that energy, get ourselves to neutral, use the practice of gratitude, and have the ability to spend moments in nature. I live in Midtown, and I've been going for long walks lately. I take the dog on a little walk because it's kind of hot, put him away, and then go for a longer walk. And there's nature in urban living as well. You know, there's so many little beautiful things and sounds and trickles and people that really help us there. And another great thing she said is, God said to Moses the first time they met, take off your shoes, be on the earth, and breathe with me for a moment. Isn't that exactly what God would say if we met it? Take off your shoes, feel connected to the earth, and feel this connection to all that we have. I think that's really powerful. There's another great quote that I read this week, and it's from John Donne, who wrote, "No man is an island." He said, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main." And you know, we also can say, no being is an island entire of itself. Each being is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. We're a part of that whole. So if we think for a moment about a world that works for all, that it requires a level of consciousness that has never existed before. Because otherwise we would have a world working for us all today. And we don't, not in practice. Never before have so many people on the planet had news and mass information and social connections available on our phones that are carried with us daily. This oversaturation of information. I don't want to make the media the bad guy, but it's just so much information that if we are to manifest a world that works for all, we must evolve into a new consciousness, a consciousness that calls us into a deeper connection in person and in that cyber world. In a world where the pandemic has pushed us further apart and also brought us together in ways through technology, today we are called to continue to connect with each other in more powerful ways. So let's communicate, let's collaborate, let's cooperate in wonderful and meaningful ways that nurture, recognize, and engage each other. Because of the unconditional, immutable, irrefutable, and irresistible power that we know to be love. And together we say, and so it is. Namaste.